Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of the New Standard. The title of the program is We Will Not Apologize for Winning. This is the Steelers versus Chargers breakdown. You're checking out the game on Wednesday, or the show, I should say, on Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. Want to welcome everybody to the program who is catching us the show and listening to the show live. Want to thank everybody for checking out the program. As always, we will look back at the last one. We will jump into Coach Tomlin's talk. We'll talk a little bit about key matchups coming up in the next game, and we will get into our predictions. But before that, make sure you like and subscribe to the program. Please support. Also, you can hit us with a super chat if you feel so inclined. We will be putting up the pod so you can catch the podcast later tonight, or you can have the podcast for your ride to work tomorrow morning. But again, you're checking out the New Standard. The title of the program is We Will Not Apologize for Winning. But before we take a look back at the last one, I want to jump into a quote that Mike Tomlin did in his press conference. I had to get it out first before we jumped into Coach Tomlin's talk. He said in his press conference, in terms of what was said after the game, in terms of the Steelers celebrating with Russell Wilson about getting the victory in Denver, he said, I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You may not like it. Come on, man. Like this dude is so creative with the quotes. Here's the thing. I hope he could be more creative with creating ways in which the Steelers could score points. Let me jump into these comments real quick from Steelers Freak. He said, in terms of the Steelers offense, I have seen breach berths less painful than Steeler W's. Double H chimed in and said, the last 2 years were far worse. Steelers Freak chimed in again and said the last 300-yard passing game was in October 2022 against the Bills in garbage time. I mean, in 2022, Joe Biden was coherent. I mean, so that tells you how long ago that was. And so Double H also said everybody is being dragged in the mud now thanks to cover two defense. And more specifically, it's the cover four shell. It's quarters. A lot of teams are presenting quarters and doing a lot of post-snap movement and really muddying the looks for quarterbacks. And the other thing is you've got a lot of young signal callers as well playing in the National Football League who are getting acclimated, and post-snap movement is really making it difficult. That's why I think in the next few years, you're going to see teams really try to reestablish the running game and use the running game as a foundation to get teams out of these too high shell coverages, because right now these young quarterbacks can't maintain. I mean, we saw Bryce Young get benched already, and Bryce is a savant. He's just not physically talented enough to be that small, in my opinion, to play in the National Football League if he doesn't have a characteristic that is elite. So if you're going to be that small, you better have elite speed, an elite arm, something much like Russell Wilson. And we'll talk about Russell Wilson in this program. Doesn't have elite size, but has huge hands and an elite arm. What's up, Big Mel? I want to say big up to Mel. Welcome back to the program. But the quote, I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You may not like it, is absolutely hilarious. And so looking back on the last one, a couple things that jumped out to me. George Pickens is absolutely a freaky guy in a league that is freaky. The level of separation he was able to get against Pat Surtain II consistently in that game shows you he just has number one traits written all over him. If he were in an offense with functional quarterback play and coordination, he would be a household name because his ability. I mean, you look at CeeDee Lamb, you look at George Pickens, who's got more physical talent? I mean, there's not many wide receivers in the National Football League, if you match up against George Pickens, that they have more physical talent. The second thing that I observed from the last one, looking back at the last one, and again, you're checking out the new standard, and the title of the program is "We Will Not Apologize for Winning." And we're going to talk about that before we jump into Coach Tomlin's talk. The first half, Justin Fields, let me just say this. First half, Justin Fields keeps the job. He starts for the entire season. And I thought the game was very interesting from the perspective that you can really see the importance of playing clean football. I think if they had played clean football, penalty-free football, they hammered Denver. And I don't think there is a question as to who is going to be the starter. I think the only reason why there's probably still a conversation as to who will be the Steelers starter is because they are averaging a half a touchdown per game. They have scored one touchdown per game. And let me just say this to Steeler Nation. I'm a little upset with y'all. I'm a little upset with Steeler Nation. Can I just say this? Let me clear my throat just a little bit and say this. If you score one touchdown in 2 games and you're 2-0, if you have more wins than you have touchdowns, shut the hell up and stop complaining. That's all I got to say. Shut the hell up and stop complaining, Steeler Nation, about how it looks. They know it looks like trash on offense, but they also know when they open the paper and they look at the standings, they're 2-0. The Bengals are 0-2. The Ravens are 0-2. The Browns are 1-1 with a shitty quarterback as well. They are 2-0 with a backup quarterback playing 2 road games, and they scored one damn touchdown. Imagine how you would feel, Steeler Nation, if they were 0-2. Like Double H said, if they were 0-2. So I don't care if they haven't beaten a good team. Who cares? It is hard to win in the National Football League, and it's particularly hard to win when you don't score no damn points. But somehow Tomlin Ball and the Steelers figure out ways to win. Let me jump into this comment from Young Boy 24. He said, we're supposed to have low expectations going into the season, and now fans are complaining about touchdowns. Absolutely. I mean, nobody thought this team was any good, but damn, they scored no touchdowns and 2 victories. I'm going to tell you this, man. I'd rather be the Steelers at 2-0 than the Arizona Cardinals at 1-1, although they scored 500 points in the last 2 games. Although the combination of Marvin Harrison Jr. and George Pickens would be absolutely sick. Look, if you could score 1 touchdown and go 2-0, hey, man, you take that and run with it. I mean, don't get greedy. The fans are just greedy. We're just greedy at times. Don't get free. It's like walking into a bank and the safe is open. Come on, dog. You need to walk your ass right back out and not take any of that money. Hey, man, it's too good to be true. This is too good to be true. Tomlin Ball has become, like Double H said, mud ball. He figures out ways to drag teams into the mud. And like Young Boy 24 said again, I'd rather be the Steelers than any other team in the division. Why? Because the Steelers are 2-0. Couple of points before we move into Coach Mike Tomlin's press conference. We just got to be cleaner. And lastly, Zach Frazier is going to be a Pro Bowler. I've watched a lot of film of Zach Frazier, and I'm gonna say this: he is fun to watch. He plays to the edge of the whistle. He plays with great leverage. His ability to get to the second level off the snap is damn near Marquise Pouncey-esque, whatever, however they say it. He is going to be a dynamic player. He is going to be a Pro Bowler. But like the other thing, the last thing, looking back at this last one, and Mel said it best, they need a number 2 wide receiver. When you are having trouble getting into the red zone and scoring like the Steelers are, you can't commit penalties, and you need a number 2 receiver. Hell, they got more penalties than a number 2 receiver has targets and or catches. I mean, it just is what it is. And Raymond, I am sorry, but Neil is on assignment. I am sorry. I'm going to try to get him on the show, but I do have his prediction for the game. Neil's just busy cooking up some treats for you Steeler fans. And John Edberg, Steelers Freak, said it best. He is chippy after the whistle. And I was talking to Neil today, and he hasn't even developed his man strength. He don't even got his man strength yet. Imagine when the kid gets his man strength. He gonna start really kicking cats' asses because right now he's nasty. And imagine how that interior of the offensive line is going to look when Siamalu comes back. But let me ask you one question, and in all seriousness, I know that it isn't, but true or false? Is James Daniels playing with a stocking cap? I swear, man. I know that's a Guardian cap, but that looks like a stocking cap. It looks like in the game, he's trying to get waves. Like, I'm just like, look, is he going to take off the stocking cap? I mean, all I'm going to say is that's absolutely funny. But Mike Tomlin, to Mel's point, did say something interesting about Broderick Jones. And we'll talk about Mike's press conference, Coach Tomlin. And I'll start it with this. He said that he's going to give Broderick Jones every opportunity to be that guy. Like he's going to let him continue to grow. He's going to let him grow and try to ascend as a player. He is not giving up on Broderick Jones. And he explained in the press conference that the reason for the snaps or them sharing snaps was that he thought that Troy Fontenot would be fatigued. Now, I've never heard of that, but it felt like a Tomlin explanation, like he wanted to give Troy, some snaps of blow in that altitude. And so that's why he sort of explained it as that. The other thing he said in this press conference is that Russell Wilson will not be a full participant in practice, and that it's looking like Justin Fields is going to be the starter. He did a lot of talk about his familiarity with the Chargers, particularly with J.K. Dobbins and Gus and Big Gus, the backup running back from the Ravens, and he talked about a lot about Herbert's scrambling ability. And he was talking about just how much about Herbert hurt them in their last matchup with his legs. The other thing he talked about a lot in the press conference was their utilization of Mack and Bosa. And he also talked about how he was very familiar with Greg Roman and that he thought as a coach that Greg Roman was okay with him being familiar with him, and that what he expects to see is what he expects to see from Greg Roman, a very physical running football game. So what I wanted to do was I took a look. I went to StatMuse, and StatMuse is a fantastic site if you guys ever feel like you need to get some stats or something and impress your friends and say, look at this stat, boy. And you could just, they might not know why you got it from Stat Muse. Let me jump into this comment from Raymond Santiago. What's up, Big Raymond? Wait, hold on. How Levi Wallace still managing to hurt the Steelers and he isn't even on the roster? He flopped for a flag to remove Pickens' only touchdown. Hey man, I guess if you can't cover, you'll flop. Here's the interesting thing, too, from Young Boy 24. Big Broderick is still hurt. And Eldrick Broderick is really good, so I won't give up on him either. I mean, they're not saying that he's hurt. He's just a young player. I mean, he is a young player. He's ascending. I mean, everybody is not a Zach Frazier who's a plug-and-play dominant guy from day one. Everybody's not going to be that. But I think they have to give him time because I asked a true or false, and I'm going to ask true or false again on this show. True or false? Dan Moore will be on the Steelers roster in 2025. True or false? Because, again, they've drafted 2 guys in the first round at the tackle position to eventually replace Dan Moore, and neither one have. I mean, it would have to be that BJ, pause, and Big Troy will be the starting tackle tandem, and Young Boy said false. I think it's false as well. I don't think that Dan Moore will be on the squad next year. There's too many assets, too many resources put into the tackle position to not give, one of those guys an opportunity. So again, in the press conference, he talked about Greg Roman. Let me give you the Greg Roman stats. And I look at the stats between 2019 and 2022 when Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. They amassed 1,513 rushing yards in 8 regular season games. They ironically went 3-5 in those games. The Steelers went 5-3 in those games. And in 2019, they rushed for 277. The second game in 2019, 223. November 1st, 2020, they ran for 457. Good Lord. December 2nd, 2020, 219, 326, 381, 309, 240. So what you can see is, at least from a scheme perspective, Greg Roman has had success against the Steelers, and they're coming in with a hot J.K. Dobbins. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that J.K. Dobbins right now leads the National Football League in rushing, and the Chargers are rushing at a significant clip. I mean, they are running the ball, and clearly we know with Harbaugh that that's going to be their identity. They're going to clearly run the football. But the last thing I want to jump into before I get into my predictions, I want to give a big shout out to Chris Carter. Big up to Carter. Carter's Takes. He does a fantastic job with his podcast. And he brought up, I'm trying to find it now, but I don't know if I can find it. It doesn't matter. But he really tried to utilize and illustrate just how impactful the Steelers' penalties were. And so that's one thing when you're not really an explosive team and you don't have explosive offensive weapons, you have to play clean football. And they have to play clean football if they're going to win because they're going up against, I'm going to say, a tier 2 quarterback in the National Football League, a guy with outstanding gifts, outstanding arm, and going up against an offense that's well coordinated. And they're going up against a very good defense. When you look at the stats of scoring defense and you look at some of the other metrics, the Chargers are just as good as the Steelers. Outstanding tandem in terms of Bosa and Mac, and that's going to be a matchup to watch. Big Troy and Dan Moore versus Bosa and Mac. Another matchup to watch will be TJ Watt against outstanding rookie tackle Joe Alt. That's going to be an interesting match. But when you look at this game, I think the Steelers are going to have to generate some explosives. I mean, they're going to have to generate some explosives in the passing game. I mean, the way they're playing right now, I mean, it might take them 125 snaps to get 30 points in a game. And I'm going to ask you a question in this show. I'm going to give you a true or false. And make sure you guys check out my true or false on Instagram. Not on Instagram, but on TikTok. I'm doing a Steelers true or false where I pose true or false questions to everybody out there so you can give your true or false. Um, True or false? The Steelers will score 30 points a game, 30 points in a game one time this year. One time, at least one time this year. The Steelers will score 30 points, true or false, at least one time this year. And thank you, Steelers Freak, for chiming in. Dobbins with 266. And I think he's averaging over 5 yards a carry, if I'm not mistaken. He's tearing it up. They're giving him the ball. And it's incredible that he's still able to be an outstanding back, considering all of the injuries that he suffered. That just shows you that he's a physical freak, and it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough, very, very, very physical home opener. I think ultimately, when I look at this game, and the way I like to pick games is I always like to look at the quarterback position. I think if the Steelers can get first half Fields, that's a great nickname, first half Fields. If they could get first half Fields for an entire game, they're dangerous. Warren is back looking healthy, almost ran for about 5 yards a carry. Najee is over 3.9, running about 4.2 a clip. We see that the offensive line is starting to gel. I'm really concerned in this game about the Steeler tackles going up against Bosa and Mack. I think that's a mismatch. I think San Diego has an advantage. You can't let those two guys wreck the game. They're going to have to, I think, stay in third and manageables by running the ball very good on early downs. Like Double H said, the Steelers' big heavies have to push forward on both sides of the ball. It's going to be interesting. This game is going to be interesting because it feels like it's going to be very ugly. Like these teams are kind of, I was going to say that they're mirrors of each other, but Justin Herbert is, Steelers don't have anybody on their roster as good as Justin Herbert. I mean, they wish they had someone on their roster as good as Justin Herbert. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can travel east and play that early game. That tends to be very difficult for teams. And you got to figure offense is going to be a little bit better. I mean, it's going to be a little bit better than it has been because at least from the perspective of scoring points, you would have to think that coming home, playing with house money, feeling good about themselves, that they pay better on offense. I think ultimately, when you look at this game, though, I think it's going to come down to turnovers, who protects the football the best, as well as in a tight game, which quarterback do you trust more? Which quarterback do you trust more? Which quarterback is going to make plays when you need plays to be made? And I think that's what it's going to be. I'm trying to find a line here. If anybody you are online right now, I'm trying to find a line to the game. I think the Steelers are favorite, if I'm not mistaken. And if they are favorite of the game, it can't be by more than 1.5 points, somewhere around there. I can't see them being I could see them being favorites just because they're at home, but I can't see them being big favorites, even though they're playing on the road. And I'm looking at the ESPN bet lines. And let me thumb through this and look at the line real quick here. And actually, they don't have the line. They're not showing the line here on this site. Uh, but I think I would think that the Steelers are slight favorites. Do any of you guys have the line in the chat? Oh, okay. Melvin said it was 2.5. That the Steelers are 2.5 point favorites. That essentially means that it's even. And there's no way in the world I would give 2.5 for the Steelers for a team. When a team averages 15.5 a game, I'm gonna give 2.5 of those points. And like Ronald Blake said, part of the difficulty as well is Chargers stayed in North Carolina and did not return to the West Coast. That's interesting. That's always interesting in terms of changing that pattern up and how you prepare and changing your schedule up. But it's probably smart of them to not go all the way back on the West Coast. But that's long. That's a long time being away from your own bed. And so that's going to be interesting. So again, key matchups: Steeler tackles versus Bosa and so against Bosa and Mac, I say. And so again, my concern is the Steelers' ability to score touchdowns. We just have not seen it. And so I think when I look at this game, and I'm going to give you Neil's prediction first. And Neil predicted the Los Angeles Superchargers to win the game 20-13. I like that score as well. I think they beat the Steelers 17-13. I think it's an ugly defensive game. I think in a game like this, their quarterback, who's a star, makes a play. I think facing that pass rush, I think that Justin Fields will eat some unnecessary sacks, kill some drives. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see some holds and some stuff on those tackles against those two pass rushers. So Double H said it. Lance picked the opposition. Steelers win, therefore. I picked the Steelers last week against Bo Sucks Knicks. And if you haven't listened to the show, make sure you check out that show, Bo Sucks Knicks. That's a fantastic show, if I must say so myself. We have the super chat out there always. Hit the like and subscribe button. Please spread the word. And again, I am picking the Chargers to win this game 17-13 in a knockdown dragout. I don't see the Steelers scoring 2 touchdowns in this game. I'm just not convinced where this offense is, although I think it is on the uptick. So for everybody in the show, like James said, we need more likes. Make sure you hit the likes. We're trying to blow this thing up. 20 years doing it. It's about time we blow this thing up. But with that, we're going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. And before we get out there, I like that prediction from Ronald Blake. Steelers 17, Chargers 14. I could see that as well. Steelers defense will score this week. That might be the only touchdowns. And last but not least, big up to Double H for the super chat. Lance picks the Steelers inadvertently. That is right, inadvertently. But hey, man, if you score 1 touchdown in 2 games, hey, you take it and you don't complain and you keep it pushing and keep it moving. But with that, we're going to conclude the show. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.